All right. Perfect. Yeah. So when I was looking at the variety of information that's coming out, and even within our Team Isogenics page is the same thing, right? You have a bunch of athletes. We have 280 athletes on that page. Um, Everybody's got their own ideas and ways of doing things. But what attracted me to Isogenics in the beginning is that everything they were doing, every product that was put out there, including the whole amp line, it fundamentally had one commonality, which is make the cells healthy first. Healthy cells create a functional, healthy body. And that was always that baseline conversation. Um, and it's one of my mentors years ago. He said, listen, you can tell people whatever you want as long as you're willing to stand in front of a judge and tell them why you told them. You can say whatever you want as long as you're willing to stand in front of a judge and and explain yourself, right? So and I would, because a lot of the work I was doing was in orthopedic rehab. We were rebuilding knees and hips and shoulders and backs of people that were discharged from surgery. So it really kind of landed on me that, yeah, it's really important that we have we're very conscious of the conversation we're having with people, especially when it comes to people dealing with, and not so much injury, but just self-image, right? People are coming into this, and what they're looking for is that they're looking for a physical transformation. But how many people are looking for a physical transformation that don't have a psychological thing going on behind it? I mean, we'd be really remiss not to even pretend that's not true. Yeah. So years ago, Kevin Adams was one of the previous CEOs of the company, and actually we were on a trip with him in Greece. And that was one of my concerns with the Isabody challenge. I said, what happens when the lights go down and people walk off stage? What happens on the other side of that? And what we saw quite frequently was the people that were semifinalists or got honorable mentions or the winners quite often gained all the weight back. We see that in The Biggest Loser that was on TV for the longest time, right? And the problem is that so you take somebody, and this is not what the whole program is about, but this is just one of the considerations of why I wanted to create it. But you take somebody who, let's say, struggled with their weight for 15, 20 years, right, or longer. And now they have an opportunity to really amend that weight in a fairly rapid sequence, right? So, 9 months, you can do, especially if you got a lot of weight, you can do do a lot of amazing work in a short period of time. So one thing that happens, of course, you're in this environment, there's a weight loss is happening, you're excited because you're putting a lot of trust and faith and hope in the people that are supporting you, that brought you in, and it feels really good, but the psychological maturation doesn't match the physical success. Does that make sense? So your brain is not able to adapt at the level of your physical success. So it really messes with people's heads because how long was that their identity? Like forever, right? And so the fact that this is changed on the outside doesn't mean it's actually changed in here. And I've seen now people that went through bariatric surgery where they had dropped, 150 pounds, in a very short period of time. But when they looked in the mirror, they still saw a 300-pound human being. Nothing had changed. So I was very conscious about that. I wanted to be able to create a forum so that we could actually speak to that specifically along the way, and not having people not having people come up and talk about their personal stories, but at least have them recognize that that's a part of the journey, right? This thing's getting healthy, awesome. This thing has to change and in concert and kind of in the same timeline as your physical attributes are changing, as you're losing your weight, you're developing the muscle, all these things are changing physically, then we really need to create a place where people can actually have that psychological shift at the same time. And quite often they don't run parallel, right? Because quite often when we have weight issues, not because we have a physiological problem. We have weight issues because there's something going on in here that allowed that to happen. So the changing of the exterior never changes the interior. In fact, it almost makes it worse sometimes because so people quite often run headlong into their own selves, and yes, they have all success, but their self-image is so distorted that they don't believe it anyhow. They feel totally fraudulent. So is this landing on anybody? Does this make sense? Right. So again, I really want, I love this company. I love the products. I love what it does, but I really want to be able to see if we can kind of fill a gap on that part of it. The other part, of course, is looking at around exercise and even just using the products. quite often, again, like as I mentioned earlier on, is that we get a lot of anecdotal evidence. Somebody goes, "So what do you do? What do you do on your cleanse day?" And we get just a million different ideas. And it's like, it's like I go to a salad bar, but as long as you only eat green, that's still cleansing. And we've gotten so far away from how cleansing works and and I think the original design of it, if you look at how much product was actually involved, that's what they call nutritional cleansing, right? Because there's a huge nutritional component to it. I think it was originally designed for people that were relatively metabolically unhealthy and just couldn't tolerate 24 hours, let alone 48 hours of zero nutrient intake. Because the brain just wouldn't allow it, right? There's so metabolically screwed, the brain would be demanding, caffeine or nicotine or sugar. And so they had to be able to support that because people were that unhealthy. So, but now we just see there's all sorts of weird permeations, but there's zero evidence to the anecdotal evidence that people are offering for their choice on how to cleanse. There's zero evidence for how, and the fact that it works doesn't mean that you know how it works, and it's not reproducible. And so again, and there's the problem with that is that because if I'm doing something and it works amazing for me, well, I'm genetically different than you are, and I'm genetically different than you are. And so there's a whole bunch of things we need to take into consideration before we start making suggestions just off the cuff saying, well, I did this, you should do that too. And it just doesn't work that way. But we can take the evidence from Isogenics Health. We can access all this great information. Dr. Paul Serio is a friend of mine, so I have opportunity to connect with him. So I have access to a lot of these individuals fairly rapidly, which is really good because if I have questions, they'll be able to offer up offer me some direction in a pretty short period of time. So having access to these brilliant people is really amazing. And one thing we know for sure is that there's no such thing as the answer. Science doesn't work that way. Science always talks about what we believe is happening, what we think is happening. It's always a bunch of ifs, maybes, ands. It's subjective too, right? So there's no definitive path other than if we create a baseline. So, for example, a baseline for strength training. So within the challenge page, what I created was three different thought processes around if you're a beginner and you have weight issues, and there's some criteria around you being able to exercise. And so you need to be able to meet certain criteria. So if you're a beginner, if you have significant weight issues, you haven't exercised before, of course, you need to deal with a physician to make sure that you're able to even begin exercising. So really looking after the people that are just starting, but also being able to help certain design people. So I don't know if anybody's ever gone to CrossFit just out of a knee-jerk reaction, right? Want to go to CrossFit, but probably a good 70% of the people going there shouldn't be there. And it doesn't mean that CrossFit isn't dangerous. It's just not appropriate for the vast majority of people, right? It just simply is the exercises there are great if you're an advanced athlete, but it's just for the average person coming in, there's too many things missing in the process that make it really risky for a lot of people. So if we can minimize the risk by saying, listen, if you're a beginner, this is where you start at. If you're more intermediate, where you've been exercising for a while, but you're struggling to make the gains that you want, this is what you need to be looking at. If you're an advanced athlete and trying to tweak it out, then here's the criteria. We can help you find a path. Within using the systems properly, learning how to use the fasting protocols properly for an athlete, as opposed to somebody who's more sedentary, and be able to actually have those distinctions every step along the way. Cleansing, the same thing. If you're a beginner, if you're more intermediate and you've been cleansing for a while, or if you're an advanced athlete, the protocol will be different. Right. So just within, so for example, when I do my cleansing, I predominantly only use water. Like nothing else, just water. I use ionics daily. I use Cleanse for Life at night and a tea, but during my cleansing day, I prefer just to use water. But I'm 10 years into this journey. My lifestyle is very different, and I'm not having to worry about fat cells opening up, dumping a bunch of PCBs back into the bloodstream. It's not that I'm not susceptible to toxic overload, because obviously I'm alive in the 21st century, right? So just being alive offers that opportunity on a daily basis. But there's ways of playing around with it that are very appropriate to each level of human being, right? So from the beginner to the person who's a bit more intermediate, and of course the person who's a bit more advanced. So we laid out, and we gave examples of there's several types of cardiovascular training that you can get involved in. Should that be your thing? If cardio is something that you want to pursue, whether it's a walking program, whether it's walk and run, whether it's learning to run a 5K, it's interval training. I put up 3 PDFs for 3 different strength training programs, and they're all just outlines and possibilities to start to create a framework. But it's but keeping everything in one place, it's kind of it's like a benevolent dictatorship, basically. Right? Is what I tried to create. I didn't want so many conflicting opinions coming in. It doesn't mean that I had the only answer, right? But it just, when you have, but if there's, it's like within the isogenics, you know, there's a lot of people that made $1 million, but you got to pick a path and stay on it until something happens, right? People just knee jerk from one thing. Is like from one book, you know, people read personal development, they love this book, and then they're off into another author, and the 5 steps over here, and the 3 principles from this book, and what you end up doing is a big old nothing, right? Except read a bunch of books. And so it's too confusing. So, and we realize both in fitness and in diet and everything else, we need to run everything back down and say, listen, we're going to assign a few variables, right? Let's all start, let's pay attention to where we're starting from and what we're looking for specifically. Not just, you know, people say, well, I want to be in better shape. Well, rounds of shape. You got that one mastered. What next? Like, what are you looking for specifically? Right? What are you looking for specifically? And people, you know, and, you know, women and men both do the same thing quite often, is that, you know, we're afraid to think that's even possible. So if I talk to a guy when I have a facility, I say, so what do you want? You know, what do you want? Like, why are you here? Well, I want to be in shape, but, you know, I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to be you. Like, I don't want to do that. You know, so why not? You know, because they think it's some sort of extreme thing that I did, where I underwent, you know, massive plastic surgery on an island that came out as this, you know, freak of nature. It's not, just there's a process, you know. And I spent the last 23 years, you know, I smoked for 15 years. I ran nightclubs. I mean, you imagine the nightclub industry. So basically anything that could basically distort your brain and hurt your lungs. Well, that was my life. And so I recreated myself over a period of time. And I want to be able to shorten that length of time. Or, you know, you could take 23 years and spend, you know, $150,000 on training, and you can do all that if you want. I mean, you know, you're more welcome. But, or I could just compartmentalize it and actually run a kind of a really interesting scientific experiment using all the principles that this company's put down, using their products, and go with the idea is that if we start with a baseline of nutrition, so this is what I'm taking, this is what I'm expecting. And then we'll do the journey together. And if you have questions saying, okay, well, my goal is to do this, what do I need to do? Well, you need to bring your calories up, or you need to bring your calories down. Then we'll do that objectively, right? Not our self-image is not running this race. It's an objective point of view. So we think about, okay, these are the specifics. When it comes to strength training, you know, have an objective point of view. So where are you on the skill set of really know how to train? And if you bang around the gym like most people and you go, you know, I work out a bit, you know, it's good. Well, then say, I don't have a clue. I want to learn. I really want to learn how to make this stuff work. And then we can walk you through the process of educating you on the fundamentals. And when you master the fundamentals of your diet, you know, including the knife and fork food and the products, if you understand the fundamentals of strength training, if you understand the fundamentals of cardiovascular training and really understand what it is, and if you understand how your brain works, and if you're willing to be honest to yourself, you don't have to tell me anything, right? It's not a Catholic confession, right? So, you know, you can be, if you're honest to yourself along the process, and then you volunteer to set some objective goals, then we collectively moving together, we can kind of share in the same conversation, right? And again, so there's no magic in this process. Rather than we're just trying to reduce the white noise that's out there, you know. And of course, you see it on social media, right? I mean, how many transformation pictures can you find that have zero to do with isogenics? Thousands. If you do anything for long enough, something's going to change. But it's not reproducible if you have no idea what's happening. So I feel great. What are you doing? I don't know. You know, I don't know how it's working. And I want people to be able to have this at least some fundamental knowledge of this is how the products work specifically. This is how cleansing works for you. This is why you feel this way. This is how strength training works specifically. And when you have some answers, especially some concrete answers that you can work with, you'll spend less time relying on your self-image as a reference point of what you're capable of or what's happening in the world, and you start relying on some intelligence. Because self-image is just an asshole all the time, right? Pardon my language. You just can't trust it, right? Because it changes. And it was interesting. I was working with this lady years ago, and this was my first insight into just how weird humans are. This lady, she was quite heavy, very narrow shoulders, very wide at the hips. And we were doing a bunch of core work on day one because we'd quite often spend 2 months just doing a lot of core work and posture work just to get her to be able to move her body around properly. After one session, lasted about an hour or so, and because it was somebody who hadn't done anything, she woke up the next day and her bum was really sore from doing these bridging exercises and from doing some basic work on the bike. So she asked me, said, "Is it possible that my bum got smaller within 24 hours?" I'm going, "Well, hey, I'm no genie in a bottle, but no, probably not. But you're probably more aware of it." Now, here was the interesting thing, and this is why strength training, especially, is so important if you do it right. What she experienced was her musculature underneath the skin, underneath the body fat. She felt her bum for the first time. And when you feel your body, when you're training intelligently, right, and you're training your back properly, you're training your legs, you're training your butt, training your abs. When you feel that, what you see in the mirror is the representation of that kinesthetic reaction inside your body, right? So all of a sudden, when people feel their body differently, they dress differently, they eat differently, they treat themselves differently. So you take somebody who's got a pretty good physique overall, let's say they're not going to step on stage in 2 weeks, but they're in pretty good shape, and you spend a week training them to the point where all the muscles are toned, so no matter where they turn, they're not really sore, but they're very aware of their body and how they carry themselves. And you do an assessment of they do a personal assessment on how they feel about themselves, their overall sense of well-being. It'll be very different from the same person if you remove all that tone, but nothing goes away. They don't get any fatter. The muscle tone didn't really disappear, but the intensity of the reference has dissipated to the point where it was kind of below the surface. They see themselves as fat because there's no discernible outline of the body for them to actually experience in the mirror. Does that make sense? Like, that's how screwed up this whole thing is. Right? And that's why it's so important to really understand what you're up against, so that when you go through the process, you can be really, really intelligent. And we're going to create a split screen in your mind. And the split screen is going to be the chirpy thing that's been kind of giving you the gears for some time now. That's saying, that you're a bit of an idiot and you shouldn't bother, and why is that? You're just getting old anyhow. Richard's got gray in his beard. Why is he even showing up? Why bother, right? And you have the why bother part of your brain that's just chirping away. We all have it, right? It never seems to go away. I've been at this a long time, and it's still just chirping up its own little bunch of nonsense. But on the other hand, is you have this other part that you start developing, which is your core intelligence, and then you know better. And when this chirps up, but then you actually have a point of perspective that's very different and it's very unique. Saying, I hear you, but I have evidence to the contrary. And we want to be able to get that at every part of your journey. So when it comes to your self-image and this thing's chirping away, and it's going to get loud, because when you start digging in, it just doesn't like the idea that it's going to have to die at some point in time. So it chirps even louder when you start working harder. So we want to be able to give you that objective ability to be, it's called mindfulness, be able to observe your own insanity and not actually have to listen to that thing in your head all the time. But you can't do that unless you have very specific bits of information that have weight to them, and you can understand it and it makes sense and it's objective and okay, I get it. And then of course you have a place to support that conversation. So throughout the whole process, like I said, there's when you go into the mastermind page, of course, there's a series of topics. Under each one, there's a heading, right? So from start here to the cleansing forum, to one on strength training, to one on cardiovascular training, to one on, of course, on mindset. And then we're going to keep expanding once our building conversation and where people are at. And what will end up happening is that the conversation will groom as we go through. People ask very specific questions. And so part of the thing would be is that, and what we're going to try to train people to do is that when you have a question, we're going to ask you over time. In the beginning, I won't be so militant, but over time, I'm going to, when you have a question, I want you to try to find the answer first. Come with a question, come with your own answer, and I'll get out my black pen and my red pen. All right? Because I want people to start thinking about this process. Because the more you start to, because I love it if you trust me. It's much better if you trust you. And if you never learn to trust you, then that's a really lousy journey for both you and me, because it makes you codependent. And it kind of feels good in the beginning, but inside this business, you don't want codependency. You want people to be strong. And so if you have the information, you have the confidence in that, of course, that'll just radiate into other parts of your life in a really powerful way. And if you get this part here and understand that there's no the answer, there's just the scientific principle of start with the theory, right? Make sure the theory is well formed, right? About what you want to do for these various parts. Move forward on that theory, and when it proves that it's not working, then that theory was wrong. Not that you were wrong, but the theory was wrong. So make a slight adjustment. And then that's what the scientific community does all the time. But the general population goes, it didn't work, means I'm a loser, I'm out. Like, really? That's, we wouldn't have much scientific progress if that was the conversation, for the last 100 years. So the more objective that I can help you guys become, the more that you learn to trust yourself. And then you'll find that as you go through this process, there'll be some core truths to diet that you'll kind of be able to work off. There'll be some core truths to cardiovascular training. There's some core truths to strength training, some real basic fundamentals we call truisms that are pretty constant. And then be some core truths to mindset. And all these pieces, once you own that, then of course you can become really creative. Then you own the process. Because now it's just art beyond that. Beyond the foundational ideas, which you'll learn over time. The rest is just art. But you can't be an artist if you don't have a palette of colors to work with, and you have to understand something about blending and how this stuff works. And if you don't know any of that, then you're just an idiot kid with a crayon, right? Hoping something's actually going to turn out. And why would you leave your health to that kind of random possibility? It just doesn't make any sense. And the only reason we would do that if we had zero expectation of success. And what a lousy place to be in. Have no what's the word? I have no expectation of success, but I'm not willing to quit. I think the Catholics call that purgatory, right? Just a really lousy place to be, right? So the only way to get past that hump is actually fill in the blanks of what you don't know. And so this is a forum to be able to do that, to have some really kind of cool conversations. But then enlighten yourself, right? It's just the reason why I can do what I do at 50, at turning 54 is because I took the time to figure out how it works. I have an accountant that looks after all my stuff, right? I'm not I don't berate myself because math is not my big thing. No, it's just, I have a skill set and there's things that I want to understand. So I invest the time to try to figure it out. And so this process, like I said, it's just in the very beginning, we'll just get you started the conversation. Maybe set up. We're talking about goals in the beginning, and we're talking about what's your goals for this Isabody challenge. But something I'd like you to also go through is that share the exercise outline, like what you did historically for exercise, what that looked like. What your challenges were, where you were with diet, and what that looked like for you. So what was your nutritional strategy? What were you following? And if it was just kind of a blind mess, then just be honest about that too. So I just been a train wreck for the last 6 months, right? And be okay with that though, right? It's just like there's no judgment here, but the more honest we can be, it's a safe place. But the most powerful thing I want you to look at is that the mindset piece. You need to get that moving first. And get that in place and just have some intention. Yes, I want to be like this, but specifically why? And there's a bit of criteria for our success. And the criteria is one, your success in this process, of course, obviously has to be good for you, mentally and physically. but it also has to be good for the people around you. So obviously your family and friends, right? It's going to have some positive spillover. It has to be good for your community, and it has to stand the test of time. Meaning 20 years from now, and you're thinking about this thing 20 years from now, and just thinking about, what's it like to be, what would it like to be 85 years old and just be flying around going, man, this is awesome. You're hanging out with 40-year-olds because all your 80-year-old friends are dead, right? Hopefully not in this community, right? So if you make a bunch of friends here. But if you start timelining the process, it becomes less about the here and now, right? Yes, you want success here, but success in anything takes time. And start fantasizing about all the other possibilities and how cool it's going to be when you reach these different milestones, and perpetually fantasize about the future, about what this process is doing. Because the challenge that we have is that there's something called ass to the flame syndrome. And ass to the flame syndrome means there's the flame, there's my ass, so the flame is the problem. And now my ass is on fire, and I'm really, really uncomfortable. Either it's in my health or whatever's going on. So it prompts you to do something, right? So you start moving away, and all of a sudden, if you move further away from the flame, is your ass on fire anymore? No, doesn't hurt at all. So the impetus for change stops, right? And guess what happens? Put your ass back on the flame again, right? And we just do that perpetually. It's just insanity, right? And that's where the yo-yo dieting and the yo-yo everything, right? Whether it's personal development, whether it's dieting, whether it's relationships, it's just that insanity. So the trick is that, yes, use the your butts on the flame, use it as a signal to wake the hell up. However, once you're woken up, then on the other side of that, okay, now what is the positive aspect of this journey? What am I looking forward next? What I'm going to do, and create all these positive ends on the future, and use that as the impetus, rather than using self-deprecating comments and internal dialogue as the way of saying, well, I'm a bit of a fat slob. I really need to get my act together, because, well, yeah, maybe that's true. However, it's not very motivating. It's not going to keep you in the game very long. And so again, that's again part of the mindfulness piece, is that being mindful and being careful of not allowing that self-deprecation, not let that self-deprecation go on and on and on inside your head. Right. So again, when we're making this process, there's no point doing all this work if this never changes, because you'll never get to appreciate it. All right. So that's a long-winded overview. I said that all without taking one breath. Do you guys have any questions, or is there anything specifically that you want or need from this whole process?
Sorry, is it okay if I just ask something?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you had like the 2 programs, and the one, I think, the like $9.99, the Isabody challenge, that's mainly just the forum, right? That's just chatting, getting advice from what you post in there.
Yeah. So there's a series of outlines for cardiovascular training programs, strength training programs, where I've got yet to update the one on nutrition, as far as like different menus and food ideas. But it can be, the whole training component can be in there as well. I offer lots of examples for it that people can pick and choose from. And then that's the other one, the program I run, which is called Factor 3. That's Factor 3 is it's a fully functional online training program.
Okay.
Right? So probably I'd say 70% of the participants are are mainly isogenics people, because it's been my community for 10 years. But I wanted to create the possibility for people that not everybody wanted to get into something like that. And so I wanted to create a forum that, we have people in Factor 3 doing the Isabody challenge, so they're doing both. But I want to keep the conversation separate, because it can get really irritating when you see all this feed going through, and it really has nothing to do with you. And this feed keeps coming through, and it's kind of nauseating, because all those happy people are really such a pain in the ass to listen to on an ongoing basis. So I wanted to be able to separate a little bit, so the conversation around within the Factor 3 group could be a little bit different.
So I signed up for the IBC group, but I think I want to sign up for the Factor 3, because I actually want the training, like the online training, the meal plans, all of that. So can
Yeah.
I?
So what we would do is that I would, yeah. So I'll send you a link, and then what we'll do is if you're doing the factor 3, then the IBC challenge is just a part of it as well. So there's no extra cost for it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll go and I'll amend your account, and then I'll send you a link, and then we'll set you up through the factor 3 part. But again, like I said, I wanted to make sure that it's, and this came out of actually coming out of celebration, where I was in Australia, where I was talking to some of our team over there, and it was just, we just wanted to have a different forum. I was spending some time with the Isabody Challenge winners and the whole crew over there. We realized that there just needed to be a much more complete forum in around this challenge that wasn't so confusing. Because I get inundated, for years now, right? Just that's why Factor 3 actually showed up, talking with my friend Jen Schultz. I said, what do I do with all this incoming in questions and queries? And how do I? I go, and I just can't respond to all those questions. And it's not just A plus B equals C. It's not that simple. So I needed to create a way to contain the forum. So not everybody's ready to do something like Factor 3. And Factor 3 essentially is for people that are not injured, that they have some experience with exercise, but just have no clue how to take it over to the next level. It's like they're willing to do the work, they just don't know which direction to go. And again, it was a forum where people need to understand how the stuff works. You can get an exercise program anywhere. You can go to bodybuilding.com and you can download 1,000 of them, right? But giving me a tennis racket doesn't make me Steffi Graf, right?
So sorry, David.
Okay.
If you're in the Factor 3 group, can you also be in the forum? Like, are you a part of it?
Yeah. No, actually, it's open to you. You just won't be charged for it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So the forum is free. I wanted to separate the two conversations. So again, because we have a good percentage of our clientele in Factor 3 are not isogenics people, so they're very nice about dealing with all the like ISO people are kind of they're kind of zealous, right? And you get ISO feed, and I'm trying to minimize that so I don't antagonize the people that are not really, they don't really care. So yeah, I wanted to split the conversation, and it's the same idea, and it's a similar conversation. The fact that I want people to understand how this works. If you understand how your body works, because it's not my body, it's not my problem. I'm doing good, right? But people don't do well because they don't get any smarter. Right? People don't do well because they're not getting any better at the activity. And it's important. And we have to develop a skill set of how to run our own body and learn how to play around the variables, right? There's always variations. It's like if you're an artist or a contractor, my brother's a tradesman, and he's got a basic set of principles, but then the rest is all art form. And your fitness is the same thing. And so is your diet. You got some basic principles, gives you lots of freedom in how to eat. Yeah, but I'll send you the link a little bit later on for that, for sure.
Yeah, I do like what you did with that though, because you're right. Like people will post in the Isabody groups on Facebook, and so many people someone will ask a question, and so many people will throw their opinions in there, and so much of it isn't even legit. It's literally just people coming in with like from one end of the spectrum to the other, and it's really hard for like even new people to look at it and go, okay, this person said this, but I thought I should be doing this. And
well, and the whole idea of compliance, and compliance is, the idea around compliance is that we want to use, like I said in the very beginning, you have to be willing to stand in front of a district court judge and say, this is why I said this, right? And so the idea is bringing the science over and say, this is the science, especially around the nutritional part, this is what the company set up. Right, and it doesn't mean that everything they put out there. I mean, science is evolving, and it's a lot of it's educated opinions is what it is, right? Because it changes all the time. So being able to say, listen, this is what you should do, and here is go to isogenicshealth.net, pull the appropriate article. This is the conversation that you need to be looking at, and we'll guide you, but inside this parameter. Right, because I'm not clinical biomed researcher, right? I don't have a white jacket, a set of test tubes, and a Bunsen burner, right? But I've got a good mind for this stuff, and being able to take their great information and being able to educate and teach people how to use it. Like how many sites, how many people are actually spending time going through isogenicshealth.net on any length? Like not very many people. Well, yeah, Richard. Yeah, Richard, you're just a geek though, like me, right? Mm-hmm. Right. But it's, you know, and again, but also, as for me, what was a really important part was actually helping develop the mindset around it as well, and really work on that part. So people, so that not only did you get the results, but you actually get to keep them. And I find it very disheartening, because the only reason people fail at anything is that they can't get their head into the game. You know, and so if we can kind of create that, create that culture and create a place where people learn how to think, learn how to pick a path, and then are supported to stay on that path no matter what. And I have I kind of joke around with some of my clients is, listen, be a Catholic, be a Jew, you got to pick a side, and freaking stay on it until it's not working. But pick something. And in this modern culture, we don't. We're so just all over the map. From you got the people. What diet you're on? Well, I'm the keto. I'm on a ketogenic, paleo, vegan, carnivore diet. Yeah. Like it, and that's what it is, right? It just, why? Well, I don't know. So and so looks amazing. Yeah, but it gave you cancer. Well, good luck. That's not so great. Like it just, like it's so many variables to this, and which is why it makes people nuts. So we just want to get rid of all the stuff, get rid of everything you think you know, and pretend you know nothing. And then start at the very beginning, and let's share the conversation. It doesn't mean I know everything, but it's just the critical thought process where let's just create the foundation. If you're going to exercise, guess what you need? You need an ass, like your bum needs to work. You need posture. Your shoulders need to be held in place, and your stomach needs to be able to brace. That has to be there, no matter what you want to do. That has to be the place where you start. With your diet, well, you got to know what you're eating. And so, eating healthy is irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. So, we'll ask you, we'll plug your calories into MyFitnessPal, and what are you eating per day? What does that look like? And if that's what you're eating, what are the results? And let's make small changes to that. Make small changes, and small changes generally will actually have some pretty exponential results. But to stay with it, be patient enough to stay with the process, let the body figure out what the hell you're doing. And make small incremental changes. The same with strength training, right? Once you build a bum and you build some great shoulders and your ab is bracing, good. Now let's start building the next piece. I said, and I've been doing this for 23 years, and the rules haven't changed. People keep hoping the rules change. They're not going to change. Human physiology functions in a very specific way, and it only responds to consistency in behavior, dietary consistency, physical consistency, and psychological consistency. If you can't master those over time, you're just going to not be having any fun at all. Life is just going to suck on some level. You'll be doing good over here because you're naturally consistent with exercise, but the diet part, because you're not willing to think it through, it's just a disaster. And so, I think it's possible. I think we can really run it down and support each other, because, every day for me is always a fight. My brain still wants to do its own thing. So, I got to check in. But it's why my grandmother read the Bible every morning, because it gave her a way to start her day. I read every single day. Why? Because it keeps training my brain and reminding me of what the plot is, what I'm here for, what do I want to do, and encouraging me to do things like this. So, and this is just as selfish for me as it is good for you, right? Because I get to have a conversation and repeat it, and I get to learn as I teach. And it reinforces what I'm doing as well. So, it's also good for me. Anybody else, gentlemen? Does this make sense? Am I leaving anything out? Or am I just rambling on?
I was going to ask what to think of the healthy mind and the healthy body through the isogenics. I've done that yet. My wife's done it and has had really good results. And yeah. I've been meaning to do it. It's just I keep procrastinating.
Well, yeah. Well, it's basically free, right? Obviously. So, and one of the good things about it, and the way to really to amp it up, to take it to another level, is that and you have to be mindful of this when you start. Is that when you go through your daily lessons and you go in with a mindset that, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm doing the Healthy Mind and Body because I'm looking for these specific changes in the way I think. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you know, and maybe I'll draw maybe a improper comparison, but when anytime you want to move forward, it's my kind of my offhanded remark: be a Catholic, be a Jew. Like, pick one. There has to be a very specific reason why we want to change. Like, you know, and for men and for women, it's just we want to move forward. It's not that what we're doing is incorrect necessarily, but maybe we're lacking some information. Maybe there's areas where like you're going, I'm kind of stalling out here, and I'm not feeling very good about it. And I should be showing up better, you know, as a you know, male role model, or as a man, or whatever the dialogue is. But be honest with that processing. I'm really trying to move myself to this next level, and this is a thought. And so when you have that thought, enter into that thought process before you start the program and before you do each one. So what ends up happening is that you take a bunch of information over the course of the entire program, but every day you're not feeling the same way. You know, you had a great day, you woke up in the morning, you're feeling great, you read the information, it's landing well, you're taking it all in, you know, all of a sudden you and your wife have some stupid fight over something innocuous, right? And then you're trying to do the program and your brain's kind of at the lunch and it doesn't land the same way. And because we're all over the map, because that's just what life is, it's just a whole bunch of variables coming at us. We used to use, you know, like religion and culture to center us continuously back to the midpoint, so we weren't all over the map. So to really get the most power out of it, decide what you want from it, what aspects of you are you trying to improve, right? So again, we're always looking for growth rather than saying, you know, I kind of suck over here, so I need to fix that. So again, not using the ass to the candle scenario, saying I'm really, you know, I believe I could show up, you know, if I just had a few hints to maybe develop a few more skills or be a little bit more mindful, I could show up this way inside my family, inside my life, for me and for everyone else, and decide what that might be. And then when you take the program, the brain's going, I know specifically what I'm looking for, and this stuff will start landing specifically on that spot each and every time. And when you're done, now you actually you had a very powerful reason. The reason was the same every single day you showed up in that program, and you'll get 10 times more out of that program than most people. Does that make sense? It's just like when somebody buys a book on personal development, who bought the book? Like, you saw the words on the page, on the cover, and your brain picked it up. What part of your brain decided that was a good book to buy? You have no idea. You have no, because it's just every part of every experience you've ever had, every thought you ever had is recorded somewhere in this mass of meat. And we don't know who's buying the book. Why do you have 10 books on personal development on the same topic? Shouldn't the first one have done the thing? Or maybe the second one? Or the fourth one? How about the fifth one? Maybe by the seventh one, you figure out there's something wrong with this whole thing. Because by the time you finish 7 books on personal development, you should be canonized. And, you know, you should be just walking on, you should be floating above the ground. Nothing wrong with buying material, but if it's not having the effect you're looking for, like exercise is not having the effect you're looking for, like diet's not having the effect you're looking for, what's missing? And it's the core set of, the core centering of the process before you start the journey. And it's kind of a fundamental flaw that we seem to make over and over again. Exercise doesn't work well for most people because they have 0 core strength. But if you take time to develop your core and you understand what it is, now when you start moving, I'm playing tennis, my core fires first. Minimizes shoulder injuries and knee injuries. I go for a run, my core fires first, right? Minimizes injuries to my lower back, neck, and knees, right? I go swimming, my core fires first. And it centers all my activities to one particular spot in the body. It's the same with a core identity or core reason. It's going to be pretty specific. And you decide that before the event. Right, and I think it would be a powerful thing for you to do, and it'd be interesting. You know, if you don't mind, as you go through that journey, if you're willing to share, you don't have to say exactly what it is you're looking for, what you wanted from it, but share if you're willing to share what was it like to center yourself every time you open up the program. What was that like, and how? And you know, was it more powerful than just reading a self-help book, being centered each and every time? Yeah, it'd be an interesting process. Is that helpful?
It reminds me of Deepak Chopra meditation that talks about asking the universe for what you want.
Yeah.
And so first you got to identify what you want. And so with any sort of self-help book or any program, you got to say, okay, the goals of the program, but what are my goals? So I think if you identify that, it'll just make it that much more relevant to you. Like how you said it, you'll get 100 times more out of it than not. So that's maybe why the people can do the same program over and over and get something new out of it each time.
Yeah, and I think it's, and when you're asking for what you want, be very specific about it. And it also has to meet the criteria of, is it good for me? Is it good for the people around me? Is it good for my community? And will it last the test of time? Right. So it's a way of kind of looking at it, is making sure that this is actually going to hang out. That's why we see a big return to. That's why spirituality has such a big push now, or the bigger conversations. It's kind of built into our DNA. We had culture, religious tradition, culture for thousands of years. And the last 100 years, we just threw it to the curb. Yeah, we didn't do that anymore. We can think for ourselves. Yeah, well, apparently not. We're not doing such a good job of it. And so, but it's also kind of built into our DNA, because you can't think that way, behave that way for such a long period of time for it not to shape your DNA. Right. So it's almost a part of who you are. And now we're trying to find a way to loop back and trying to find it. It's very confusing. But I think if we get rid of all the fluff and saying, we know fundamentally what we need to be doing, right? Because if we didn't know what we needed to be doing, we'd never be unhappy. Right? There's knowing better and doing better, right? So if you didn't know any different, you'd be ecstatic. You wouldn't care. You wouldn't be talking up. You wouldn't be here. You'd be fine. But but the fact that we had that contrast between knowing better and doing better, that's what drives people insane. We know we should eat better. Doesn't matter if you know, right? Not acting on it. We know we should show up. We know we should be getting more sleep, right? We know better. We know we should be showing different in our families sometimes. We know better. We know we should do this with our health. We know better. We know we should be saving more money. Maybe shut off the stupid cable. We know that. Knowledge is irrelevant, right? And all the misery lies in the fact that we do know what we should be doing, but somehow we can't seem to get our act together. So the whole idea is run it down to the very basic core set of simple core principles, and have that powerful conversation, and then and so no matter where you go, there you are. All right. I find you in Las Vegas. I'm not going to find a different version of Richard in Las Vegas as I do in Saskatoon. Maybe a little bit more, intoxicated in Las Vegas, but who you are hasn't changed as a human being. Your values, your culture, your identity really remains intact. You just might be a bit more verbose in Las Vegas, but you don't unhinge morally because you're there. And it's that kind of process, right? So that's what the whole idea of this whole core-centered training. We get all this great stuff here. We just need to anchor it to a very particular path and align ourselves to it. And you'll see some pretty extraordinary things happen when when energy is not scattered in 10 different directions, and everything is moving in a particular direction. All your energy is moving you quickly in the path that you've chosen. So, yeah, it's all very interesting stuff.
Basal metabolic rate, like I know MyFitnessPal, you mentioned that before, from a calorie tracking point of view, and it gives an idea of a person's metabolic rate. Would you think that the electronic scales with impedance monitors that that you stand on and sends a current through your body, and it comes up with a daily caloric total burning from your body based on whatever it measures, are they fairly accurate? Might be more accurate than in MyFitnessPal, maybe. But
yeah, I mean, it's one scientist said the only way to measure your, like, let's say, total body composition is jump up and down and then stop. Whatever keeps moving is fat, but and the rest is muscle. There really is no great accurate way to do it, because when you're looking at impedance can be controlled by levels of hydration. Well, I always found the best tool is pictures and measurements. weight will give you some idea, but if I have a series of pictures front, side, and back, and I do that continuously, let's say every 2 weeks, and I'm doing a full set of measurements, I'll be able to see the difference in how my body's responding. But when we're looking at BMI, it's a huge variable. Like, I'm about 218 pounds, so I'm clinically obese. When I went for my insurance policy, the fact that my blood pressure is great, my heart rate's great, all my blood values are great, everything's great, too heavy. They just couldn't. They had no way of assessing. So when you're looking at most things clinically, are they're based on the extreme. Yeah, they're based on the extremes, right? So and so anybody who falls in the middle, if you're a bit too healthy and a bit too lean, most of the statistics have nothing to do with you, which is the problem, right? So you get but if we have a weight goal, the weight goal is actually an image goal. So if you say I want to weigh 185 pounds, well, it's not you don't want to weigh 185 pounds. You want to achieve the physical representation of what you think that looks like. So you're better off with the images and just taping it and doing measurements. And you can use stuff like that, but again, it's just, there's a fair amount of variability to it. So I wouldn't stake my life on the results all the time. Hey guys, so again, I just wanted to, no such thing as brief with me in conversations, but I wanted to just kind of briefly jump in, just let you know why I put the thing together, and again, and obviously I'm very passionate about the industry, but I think there's room to be a lot more successful in this process. And it's not that I have all the answers in the world and that I claim all knowledge and intelligence about this process, but I wanted to get rid of as much noise. Right, as you're saying before, right, gives much noise and keep it really specific so we have an intelligent conversation. Adults doing intelligent things, being responsible for our own personal health, learning how to do it, and the more you do that, and the more you understand it, even at the most rudimentary level, the more power you're going to have. And so at the end of the day, self-image doesn't drive your results. Self-image doesn't drive your behavior. It's a really lousy way to try to be successful. And I'd like it that, it'd be wonderful if we had a bunch of intelligent people running around going, no, well, I hear what you're saying, but, there's some variables to that. And let's just start at the beginning. And when you're going to coach people through, it's just, it's important to know that when you're helping your associates come through this process as well, to have some understanding that it's not as black and white as it appears. And it makes you feel less frustrated. Because when you get great results doing what you did, and then Richard, you bring somebody in, or Rod brings somebody in, and they're just tanking and not losing any weight, you feel like such an idiot. You're like, man, I don't know. Like all of a sudden, where the spotlight's on us, I feel like a moron. Like we're just not. But if we understand, there's lots of variability, and you start everybody up properly, and your conversation is that we're going to start with doing this, but let's stay in contact because everybody's different, and we might need to make some adjustments along the way. And you start with that as the opening conversation, leave lots of room for experimentation throughout this whole process. Right? So you're going to be a lot less liable to be a deer in a headlight when somebody says it's not working. Because then people panic, right? It's not working. Oh my God, they're going to stop. They're going to send all this stuff back, and I look like an idiot, and they're a family friend, and just all this anxiety around it. But if you understand the process well enough to know that there's no answer, there's just let's start with a plan. Let's put it into practice. We know enough about who you are. We decided on this pack. We'll get you started, but let's communicate and make sure that because it may not, everybody reacts a little bit differently. I want you to tell me, especially in the first 5 days, how it's responding, how you're feeling, and I can help make some suggestions. Right? So again, lots of variability. And I think you have a lot more success when people know that, when you know that there's no absolutes, but then you also have some freedom. If you have some freedom to explore the conversation, and then again, you can always pop back in here and have conversations with long-winded people like myself that really like the geek stuff about all this. And people like Richard, he dropped a bomb on me the other day, asked me some pretty good questions. I go, so it's good though. It's just, I love that sort of stuff. And yeah. Guys, is there anything else? I want to be sensitive to time here for everyone. Was that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's, so let the games begin. it's I'll go into the page. Like I'll save this. I'll put the recording in there, but I'll also kind of paraphrase, some of the first steps. I'll kind of recap some of the first steps, the things that we're looking for, right, moving forward. But it'd be nice to know what your goals are specifically going forward, and what kind of things you may need help with, what things you need to kind of bring back into line to make this journey actually work out the way you want, so that it's a one-stop shop. So it's only going forward, right? We don't want to do over, right? As my father says, be lazy, do it right the first time. All right, guys. Well, listen. With that said, listen. I'll let you all go. I know we're different time zones here. It's a few yawning faces here. I appreciate you investing a little bit of time in this process, and I'm hyper open to feedback, good, bad, or otherwise. And if you have things that you think might be valuable for me to understand about you, or the things that I'm missing, regardless of what it is, all feedback is good, because it just makes this process a lot better for future generations of people to come. So.
Okay, thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night, guys.
Okay.
Thanks, David.
If some of the people that couldn't make it ask about it, maybe on our main Facebook Messenger link, I'll just say, that.
What I'll do is I'll save this. I'll upload to YouTube, and then I'll drop the link in.
Perfect. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. Okay, good night, everyone.